Right, so I've started a little bit of work on the Hyundai, starting from the underneath chassis, the first page. So you've got the underneath chassis itself tells you to paint that piping. Underneath chassis silver. Then you've got these extra, a couple of rubber bits there and a couple of support arms there. You've got the underneath engine block with an axle on it. So the axle sits onto the underneath there. There's some little pegs underneath there and you just push them in. Then you've got the brakes. So you've got the disc hub with the little washer and the suspension. And then you paint all that. And then you put your photo etch brake disc on. And then going on to the second page, then it tells you to put the completed brake hub assemblies on, and a bit more of the axle support with the axle that goes underneath, and then it tells you to do the rear brakes, but I haven't done those yet. I'm just doing the front section first. So putting that back on there. So here's what I've done. So I've painted me underneath chassis in the aluminium, and then gunmetal for that exhaust pipe. You've got this pipe with the orange. You've got the light brown, which is ochre, and then you've got the engine bits, which I've done in aluminium. Gold for the transmission arms for the axle. You've got these two arms here, those two that side, that's the ochre as well. This is rubber, so I left that. It tells you to spray paint it in black, but it's already black anyway, so I just painted my ochre on these little bendy tube part of it there, and then just glued that into the underneath, which is two holes there, one and there and one there. And that's the underneath of the chassis done. I've still got to put a second coat of the ochre on. Then you got the front brakes. So it's one piece. Then you've got the brake hub. One piece of the suspension arms and the coils. And then you've got to glue the brake hub with the cap inside there, the little rubber washer. And then you paint everything else. So you've got gold, gunmetal. And then I just cut the photo etch off the top and just super glued that on. That's it. So that's it for that update. All I've got to do now is just do what it says on there, glue it all in. And the next update, you'll see the front axle and hubs and wheels all done. Right, so I've completed the front suspension and axles as explained on the first page, from stage 2 onwards, stage 2, 3 and 4. So I've done all that. Now, when it comes to mounting all those bits, this is where it gets quite difficult. So firstly, you have to put the brake hubs on with the suspension rods, and you have to line up the rubber pieces into the hole on the back of there, and then you have to line up the suspension into that hole, and then you have to rest that in the big hole at the back of the brake hub. Very, very difficult indeed. Then this is where it gets really difficult, because you don't glue those in, the brake hubs, you just let them rest in that hole and on the back of that rubber peg for that rubber piece there. I think it's representing some air hoses. So you've got to put this arm on, then you've got to put these Z clips on top of those arms. So you put the arms on the pegs there on the back of the brake, and then you've got to line up 5 holes. Is it 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 holes as you're putting that piece down, and that's quite difficult as well. So here's my final result of putting all that on. You can also see where I've dropped the glue on, it's melted away the paint, so I've got to retop these up. So you put the arm in there, there's a little channel there, there and there, so you line that arm with the channel. Then you've got to put it on the pegs, but you've got to widen the holes slightly. So I did that. Once I widened the holes, they went on perfect. Then I glued the little Z rods on, the Z-shaped rods there. So there's a hole there and a hole there. So that goes on top of that steering arm, steering rod, and then it goes on top of the back of the brake here. You still don't glue them on, because then what you've got to do is you've got to maneuver a peg there, peg there, peg there onto, because there's loads of pegs, about I think it's 1, 2, 3 pegs, and on the other side, and you've got the, remember those little arms that go in there? Let's just see if I can get in there. There's that little arm there that goes like an L shape. That was loose, and I was thinking, where that going to go? Then I noticed this hole here. But what I had to do is, as I was manoeuvring, I had to get them lined up first. 1, 2, 3, 4. But then what you have to do is you have to get your tweezer in there, and it will actually sit about here. So you need to pull that right over without breaking it. So very, very gently pull it over, and it'll just slot in that hole there. Same as for that one as well. You've got to manoeuvre it from there and pull it back and put it in the hole there. Once that's done, hold it all down, and then just put a drop of glue on each of the pegs in the holes. And then I've got my scissor clamps, 2 more scissor clamps, and I put one there, and I put one there to hold it all down. 6 hours later, that's lovely and dry. So all I've got to do now is just top up with the black and silver paint where the glues come away. I've also painted this now. I did it in the ochre, and then I've done a second coat, and that's lovely and dry now. So the next stage will be 7, 8 and 9, which is the rear brake hubs and suspension coils, and then you've got the rear axles. Those are your little L shapes like on the front. They're pretty much the same, and then you've got to do the same on that one. So I've painted all those on the sprues. So my suspension coils are now on the back of the brakes. They're drying. The rear axle, that's painted on the sprue. You've got a little box there that goes behind the rear axle. You've got those 2 there in the ochre. Those will sit there and on the other side inside the wheel hub. And I think these are brake ducts. So you've got one there and one there. Those have got to go on there as well. Those go each side of the rear brake assembly. So I'm just waiting for these to dry now, and then once that's dry, I will then start stage 7, 8 and 9. Right, so I'm now started work on the rear suspension axle. That's what I've got done so far. And this is steps 7 through 9. So you've got the right and left suspension on with the brake hubs, the axle, and a few bits and bobs on top of that. So rinse and repeat on the rear, brake hubs and suspension arms, suspension rods. Photo etch for the actual brake disc, and then basically what I did is I put the little L-shaped arms on first, then I put that square ochre painted part in the hub. You've also got the rubber piece as well. That glues from there to there. Once those are glued in, then you glue the axle assembly down. I had to widen the hole slightly. And then I think them are brake ducts and whatever that piece is. And that's what I've got there. I've not long glued these down. I glued these down about 45 minutes ago with the Tamiya extra thin, and it's dried quite quickly, to be honest. So what I did is I just I better put the flash on. Let's put the flash on, hold on a sec. There we go. So where the suspension coil with that little notch through there, I'll just put a bit of Tamiya extra thin in there, and that's the only thing that's holding it down. I've just rested the axle end into the back of the brake caliper. Rinse and repeat on that side. But before I put that in, this brake duct of what I believe it might be, there's 2 holes and 2 pegs on each of one of those. I had to widen the hole slightly, glued them in, then you glue that in. Because originally I actually glued these in and I was like, I can't get that in, so I had to take it out and then like I said, drill the holes in the, widen the holes and then put it back in. On here, before you put the brakes on, there's a hole there, and there's 2 holes here. There's actually 2 holes there. I had to widen all those holes and just plug that into place. You've got them L-shaped arms there. You put those on first before anything else. And those tuck in front of the axle bars. You've got this here, whatever the hell that is. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just waiting for the glue to dry now. And then once that's dry, and I'll start work on this again tomorrow. It's Sunday today, so it'll be Monday when I get home from work. And then that's basically steps 7, 8 and 9 done. And now it's time to start the next page. Right, welcome back. Now steps 7 through 9 are done, which was the rear axle assemblies. It's time to start steps 10 through 14, which is the next page. So you've got some like rear supports, rear guards maybe. You've got the axle brace, that's got to go on top of that. You've got an exhaust, and then you've got the front sump guard, and you've got the rear diffuser plate. And then you got rims and tyres, and then I've got to put these rubber pieces on once I've done all that. So basically what I've done is I've steps, so I've got stuff painted on the sprue. So you've got the 2 rear supports, those are painted in black. Then you've got, those are painted on the sprue, so that's the 1. Then you've got the 2 supports, painted those in the ochre. The rear exhaust pipe, that's in gunmetal. The front sump guard, at the moment it's spray painted in black because it's mostly all black. This square piece here, I've got to mask that off and paint that in aluminium. And then you've got round here, these round here, around that line, and then it goes all the way down there, and that there, that's got to be painted in ochre, so I've got to do that next. While I was on the sprue, I also painted this foot plate and some part of the dash. I think it's a little screen. Those have also got to be done in black. You've also got the rear axle brace that goes on the top in stage 11, so that's in black. I think that's a part of the front splitter, that's also in black, so I've done those at the same time. Last but not least, the rims. It tells you to paint them in Tamiya gunmetal. Which one was it now? Gunmetal. TS42. But looking at some pictures online, it's actually quite darker. So if you remember from one of my other builds, my Battlestar Galactica build from many years ago, I've still got that can left. And the war paint that I use on the gunmetal. So I just sprayed those with a little bit of that army paint of gunmetal that I've got left, inside and out. And so those are now ready to be mounted onto the tyres. So the next time you see this, all this work will be done. Right, I'm about to start assembling stages, step through 14, starting with step 10. I've just noticed an error in the plans. Part I7, which is this, it's the wrong way. Because you've got a little spacer there for the axle bar, and it's telling me I've got to mount it the other way. But if I do it the way they want it, the way it says on the plans, that's the way it's on the plans, that way. The actual two notches should be on the top. You can see the one notch on the bottom for the axle rod, and then you've got two on the top. Well, that's not right for a starter, because that's the way it says to do it. So I've just realised that I7 actually goes where I6 is. So if I just put them into the little holes and the little pegs, yeah, that's right, and that slots in perfect. That's how it should be. So just a super quick heads up, I7 goes there and I6 goes on the other side. I don't know why that is, but it's just the way it is. So just a super quick heads up just on those parts. Right, the rear axle assembly is done. This was a right ball ache, it really was. It was an absolute ball ache. Right, so when I glued I6 and I7 the opposite way round, this pin and pin notch here actually sits underneath there. So before you glue these two ochre side panels down, you've got to get that in there, don't glue it. And then its other arm goes there, but don't glue it. Because when you put the axle brace on, there's a peg there on the back of the brake hub that's got to align to that. Same on the other side. But what you've actually got to do, you don't glue those, and then it tells you what you've got to do. As you're putting that down, you've got to bring those forward. So you've got to lift them up and bring them forward, and then them sit in two little grooves on the top of the axle support, and it sits there and it sits there in a groove. So you've got to, when you've got them there, you've got to bring them up, link it to that side, and while you've got that side down, you've got to try and bring that side up and link it to that. And then once you've got all them linked, then you've got to do link, 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 and link all four parts. It is a right ball ache, I could tell you that now. And once you've got all that done, then you've got to put the pins, because they'll come out there as well. So you've got to put that pin back in there and that pin back in there with your tweezers and bend it back so it'll go into the hole. And then once you've done that, drop your glue in with these ochre side panels. That was a ball ache. I'm glad I ain't got to do that again. Oh dear. So now, next up we'll be putting the sump guard and the rear diffuser on. But again, that was a right ball ache. Right, a little bit more work on the Hyundai. I've now finished off the underneath chassis. as explained in steps 12, 13 and 14. So you've got the two plates on, you've got the rear diffuser plate and the front sump guard. Then you've got all four rims on the tyres, and then you put those on with the rubber pieces. Now you get 5 tyres, 5 rims and 5 tyres, but the one that's got to go inside the car behind the driver's seat, it hasn't got a peg on it. The other 4 have, they've got pegs on them. So when I'd left you, I'd just I've spray painted the rear diffuser in the black. That's now glued in. There were 3 holes, if you remember, off the rear axle. There's 3 holes each side, so I had to widen those slightly. I had to widen the 2 holes here. Once I'd done that, it just clicked into place, so I just put a drop of Tamiya extra thin in the holes and just clicked it back into place. On the front one, I've now painted on the silver and the ochre. So I got some 1mm masking tape, went round the silver plate, then painted on the silver, took the masking tape off and reapplied it to the edge of the silver plate once I painted it, and then I just painted the ochre on top of that, and I finished that off this morning. The silver took 2 coats and a touch-up, and the ochre was 3 coats. Once that was done, there was how many holes was there now? There was 2 here, and there was 3 at the front, and I had to widen those. That clicked into place once I widened them, and then I just put a drop of glue in each hole and let that set, and that's fully dry now. So, and then you've got the 2 rubber parts. Now underneath there's 3 holes again, 1, 2, 3. Quite difficult to get in the holes, but with a pair of tweezers on the little rubber tab, the little rubber peg, they'll go right in. I haven't even glued those into place, so that's what I've done there. So now that's done, and then I've put the rubber tie, the rims into their respective holes. Now into the brake hubs, you remember that little rubber sleeve? There's a rubber sleeve in each one of those. It was quite difficult to get them in, and I never thought about this at the time. It's probably what I should have done. When you come to do this, get a drop of Vaseline or KY jelly or petroleum jelly, whatever you want to do, and just put a drop in the hole and they'll slip right in. I didn't do that, so what I did is I just put them in and then twisted them on, and actually on the rear axle with the brake hub, it actually come loose. So I put I put some glue on, and then I put the rim back in, and then I just let it on its wheels like that, and that actually put the pressure back on, because the axle where the square piece was, that actually came out. So I did that with a bit of Tamiya extra thin. So with a bit of petroleum jelly or KY jelly, whatever, just put a drop in those holes and it'll help them go in a hell of a lot better. So all 4 rims and tyres are in now. So it's time to start the next page.